It saddens me to say this, and it's something that it just occurred to me as recent as this past day, yesterday. Um, and I've been thinking about it all evening, and it's cultivated to the point where I need to comment about it. So here it goes. I think that we are now experiencing at the moment the next the second civil war with no end in sight. This is the second civil war that the United States is in. It's not being declared as such officially. It will be, in my opinion, viewed as a civil war that's taking place at the present. And when the historians determine that this time period is now, as we know it, our current second civil war, there'll be debates probably when that civil war started. But I am going to start with the year 1992. But before I start with the year 1992, just as every major war that's happened throughout history, events, crisis, um, just life happening leads to such events. Um, the first American Civil War, well, the Civil War, we're just going to call it, back in the 1860s. What led to the event was both um, slavery, although it was not 100% completely about slavery. It was about preserving the Union, which I think that was their primary concern. Slavery was a secondary concern, um, but I think that it was a combination of both concerns that led to the Civil War. Um, just as between the time of Napoleon up to the time of the Archduke Ferdinand being assassinated um, in 1914 by Serbian nationalists, kind of led to what is now World War One. Because the Allies of World War One wanted to bleed Germany dry of reparations, and plus the United States not doing their part within the League of Nations, and plus a lot of political instability and a lot of economic turmoil, and many other events led to the rise of extremist movements. That led to the rise of Hitler in Germany and to the rise of Mussolini in Italy, aligning themselves with Japan, which led to World War II. Um, the growth of communist influence after World War II led to the Cold War. Um, we are in a broader war today. Some people may say we're living through World War III currently with the post 9/11 world and the clash between the West and the Islamic world today. Is it a civil? Is it an actual world war, or is it a police action? I guess historians are going to be debating that too in the future. So let me start with the events that led to, and I'm going to choose the year 1992, in my opinion, as the year the American Civil War, or Part Two, took place. And we're going to go back 12 years to the election of Ronald Reagan. And for some of the thoughtful conservatives in this audience, I am not Reagan bashing at all. So don't interpret it that way, although it's going to sound like it. But with the rise of Ronald Reagan as the president in 1980, and being reelected in '84. Um, the New Deal consensus that even Republicans like Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford uh, were more or less okay with, um, went out of the just went down the tubes, and the Reagan Revolution was so successful, unfortunately, from my perspective, that the Democrats decided if you can't beat them, join them, and it was not just the Democrats. This was a global thing in the West. Democrats became more corporate, embracing neoliberalism, and doing their third way dance and shuffle. In Great Britain, the Thatcher Revolution was so successful over there. Again, unfortunately, that the it led to the rise of what was called New Labour, when the British Labour Party ditched their socialism and embraced a softer Thatcherism, uh, with Tony Blair being the human vessel for such views. The human vessel in America for the Reagan Revolution through liberal sheet clothing was Bill Clinton, Democratic Leadership Council, and what is known today as the corporate Democrats. And again, I'm not going to. I'm not a fan of Bill Clinton, but it's going to sound like I'm also bashing Bill Clinton, and I'm not. Um, I am explaining how everything evolved, and the Democrats. And I know this because I was a partisan Democrat back in the late '80s, early '90s when I started voting. Kind of felt hopeless about ever winning the White House again. That it was just hopeless, and no matter what Democrats no matter what they tried to do, they kept losing presidential elections. I would say that even back then, losing presidential elections wasn't quite as bad as what happened under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, when both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama managed to lose the Democratic majority in several midterms over the years during each of their presidency. With Bill Clinton, he lost the House and the Senate in 1994. It took 12 years to get a Democratic majority again. Under Barack Obama, the Democrats lost the House, and the Democrats lost the that was 2010, and the Democrats lost the Senate in 2014. So I would say that I can't believe that I'm calling the Reagan era the good old days, because while the country was shifting to the far to the right, it wasn't shifting as far right then as it's been doing over years on overdrive. Um, but Bill Clinton got the Democratic nomination, and at the Republican convention, the religious right were very vocal, and Pat Buchanan made his speech about the culture war, and it was a very chilling speech, a very disturbing speech, um, and you can almost call that your pre-Trump speech. That was your prototype Donald Trump right there with Pat Buchanan. Well, Bill Clinton won in 1992, and I personally think that Bill Clinton won for one reason in 1992 and 1996, and that was because of H. Ross Perot. This is why I tell a lot of Democrats that the whole Democratic Leadership Council and becoming a corporate party is not a winning strategy like they think. Just because Bill Clinton won in 1992 and 1996 as a centrist does not mean being a centrist was what was appealing. Bill Clinton would have lost in 1992 and in 1996 had it not been for H. Ross Perot's campaign of taking votes away from Republicans who couldn't quite stomach voting for George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 or Bob Dole in 1996. Um, I'm not saying that H. Ross Perot was right wing, but he appealed to disgruntled Republicans. There were disgruntled left wing liberal Democrats too that kind of liked H. Ross Perot. Ross Perot was an ideologically mixed bag. But anyway, um, the Republicans, as I said, were riding high still in the 1990s. It was a very optimistic time because they took over the House and the Senate for the first time since the 1950s, and they managed to push Bill Clinton to the right. While there was a dog and pony show and it looked like Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich were duking it out, really behind the scenes they were politically speaking sucking each other's cocks. And what I mean by that is things like the like Glass Steagall was repealed, for example, which led to the economic crash in 2007 with deregulation on super overdrive during the George W. Bush years. But it was God, gays, and guns, God, gays, and guns, God, gays, and guns throughout the late 1990s. And it was Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell with their conspiracy theories and and, and demonizing the liberal left as as communist, atheistic um, assholes trying to destroy America, which wasn't true. But that's what they were trying to do, and they stooped to no low in regard. And you had the talk radio era with Rush Limbaugh, who spouted his bullshit um, daily for 3 hours a day, as he currently is doing to this day. And you got a lot of Democrats, a lot of liberals that were getting kicked and just taking a lot of shit from right wing types, winning the public relations battle all the time. Um, George W. Bush in 2000, of course, kind of halfway accidentally and halfway cheated to win in 2000. Nobody predicted what was going to happen with the handful of counties in southern Florida in 2000, which made it so that there was no declared winner, but Kathleen Harris, who was the Secretary of State and Republican, who was naturally biased, and a Supreme Court that leaned right made it possible for George W. Bush to win, and not that it was any great loss over Al Gore or Joe Lieberman, because Al Gore was just as involved with the Democratic Leadership Council, and Joe Lieberman was a little worse than your DLC Democrat, even though he was a DLC man himself. I've always kind of joked that in 2000 you have the Bush Cheney campaign, and you had versus the Gore campaign, and even the Al Gore campaign had their Bush and Cheney wing through Joe Lieberman. Um, well, you know, George W. Bush became president, and I said it once, and I'll say it again. He governed over what is probably the biggest decline in American history. I've always have considered George W. Bush the worst president. I stand by that. I stand by that, in spite of what exists in the White House at the moment. George W. Bush. It wasn't his fault that 9/11 happened, but his response led to the economic crash, along with hyper deregulation of the economy, and just the fact that the Bush administration were filled with bumbling idiots that took every mistaken wrong turn toward fighting terrorism. You can imagine committing war crimes, um, using private armies, such as Blackwater USA, do a lot of the dirty work, stuffing the pockets of Bush and Cheney through Halliburton, um, and we saw the rising oil prices, which was a strain on the American people, and we it was just a terrible time. and the housing bubble in 2007 due to the deregulation that took place a decade earlier. And that led to the rise of Obama. But prior to that, while the right wing were being obnoxious during the 1990s, it was more or less the left's turn as payback. And basically, the protests against the war, and I would say this: at least a lot of liberals back then halfway showed some spine against George W. Bush in a way which was effective and halfway meaningful. Um, but the problems with the Bush presidency led to the false hope and change of Barack Obama. And while the fact that Obama was the first African American president to be elected, which that in itself is a good thing because your skin color should not be a barrier as to how you govern a country. I just wish that Barack Obama would have governed more like what Dr. Cornell West's vision of America would have been like, instead of continuing George W. Bush and Dick Cheney's policies. So that's what happened there with Obama, and Obama governed like a centrist, but while he governed like a centrist, for some reason, a lot of right wing people mad. How dare this Obama guy take the presidency away from a Republican? And what would have happened? It would have been John McCain as the president, and he would have continued the war crimes, which, because John McCain is a war criminal, just as George W. Bush and Dick Cheney are war criminals. But then again, Obama decided he was going to be a war criminal and continued the policies of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. And he tried to do some minor good things for the economy, and the Republican right thought it was socialism on the march, and the Tea Party came about. And this is where kind of your prototype alt-right movement came from. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody from the Tea Party are racist. I mean, if you don't like Obama because you don't like his tax policy, or you don't like you have a fundamental disagreement over abortion, or or some of these little issues like that, that's one thing. But if you're going around to these Tea Party rallies and you're saying that the whites are the Jews of Obama's Nazi ovens, and you're walking around with Obama hung in an effigy, or banners that has Obama painted as a African witch doctor with a bone across his nose, then you're a fucking racist moron, piece of shit at that point. So I can discern. I really can discern. But we saw with the birther movement, claiming Obama was a secret Muslim born in Kenya, which is is so refutable. I mean, one, if he was really born in Kenya and trying to secretly become a president here, all these people who were loving how Bush was fighting the war against Islam during his presidency with the Department of Homeland Security domestically should realize, if that's true, then George W. Bush was mighty incompetent, and Barack Obama is the smartest motherfucker in the history of mankind. Because if that was the case, how the hell would Obama have been available for being on the ballot? I know the right wing hacks who are still attached to birtherism. They pretty much don't have an answer for that, because they don't think with logic. And then, of course, Obama was reelected because a stiff suit like Mitt Romney came about, and certainly not the worst Republican imaginable, but certainly he certainly wouldn't have been a return to a sensible Dwight Eisenhower era Republican, or even Richard Nixon. That's how far to the right Republicans are. Republicans are so far to the right that even Barack Obama and Bill Clinton governed to the right of Richard Nixon. That's the terrible part about what's happened over the years. Then you have the gay marriage thing, the thing that the right wing was just like scared of the gays. Ooh, when the religious right is to be feared with more than anything else. I am glad that the religious right lost the culture war on the gay questions. They have made a lot of strides, and I'm glad that gays and lesbians have a right to marry, and I'm glad that they're having more and more civil rights being recognized throughout the country. But there's still a long ways to go. But while the right wing have lost on the culture war between, their supremacy against gays and lesbians and bisexual, transgender, queer people, they latch on to the one thing they love more than anything else, and that's war. They want the United States to fight a war against Iran more than anything else. This is why they criticize Obama over the anti-nuclear arms treaty with Iran. Not a fan of Iran myself, but I'm glad that Obama did. That's one of the best things, one of the one of the most positive things he did while he was president. Um, and my problem with it didn't go far enough. I have decided in the last few years that while Iran, as far as the government's concerned, toward its own people, is a piece of shit government, and I would love to see it being replaced with a secular democracy. At the same time, uh, I don't lose sleep over Iran committing terrorism against the West because that's Saudi Arabia is the one that does that. The one that the United States likes to partner with, they're the enablers of terrorism against the Western world, not Iran. For every for every terrorist action committed by Iran, there's like probably about 10 actions by Saudi Arabia, directly or indirectly. And why the United States is friends with Saudi Arabia, let alone selling arms to them to commit genocide against the people of Yemen, um, the United States enables them. And when Republicans are in power and they like they are right now, and Trump is wanting to sell arms to Saudi Arabia, hardly a peep out of most Republicans. There's a few that like Rand Paul and Mike Lee, and God bless them. They have a non-interventionist policy. They're wrong on everything, but foreign policy is one of the few things that they're okay on. Good for them. But with the hope and change that pretty much just gone away, was replaced with fear and loading and all that. So Donald Trump, who I personally do not think he is as right wing as he purports to be, he knows how to manipulate media. He knew that his meal ticket to the presidency could take place by feeding on the fears of a rabid right wing base, the ones that spend all their time reading posts from Free Republic. Um, these people. So he tried that approach. So he became basically a new Pat Buchanan of sorts. Um, and that's what that was the new movement, and the Trumpian movement took place. As I said, I don't think he's as right wing as he purports to be, but he's an opportunist. But I have a side conspiracy theory about Donald Trump. I don't necessarily think Donald Trump was interested in becoming president. I think that because Bill and Hillary Clinton were buddies with the Trumps, and they were. There's like a bunch of pictures of Donald Trump and Bill Clinton playing golf together and everything. And I think that Bill Clinton probably gave Donald Trump a call, and he was like, Don, my wife Hillary needs to win, and I think maybe you ought to go and put your name in the Republican primary, and kind of do a divide conquer strategy with the Republicans. And you can have Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio fighting each other and fighting you, And you're going to go do well when whoever the Republican wins out of this, and Hillary will scratch your back as you're scratching her back right now by agreeing to run for president. Well, that's what I think happened. I stand by that. But I think somewhere along the way, Donald Trump decided, you know, I can't do a great Trump impression. You know, I think that maybe fuck the Clintons. I think that I might be able to actually become president. Melania, I know you don't want to be first lady, but let's do this. So Donald Trump basically went and won the election, and while the Clintons and the Trumps were as far back as 2015 not enemies of each other and were kind of okay with each other, I can see them pretty much hating each other to this day. Well, the Trump movement led to what is now the alt right, with the really extreme anti-immigration talk, and and the dog whistles on racism, which were louder than usual. Um, and so there were legitimate concerns among liberals and even centrists, and maybe even a few conservatives, that that we are having a new fascist movement going on in this country. And certainly didn't help matters with Donald Trump, as a result of people dying at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, saying that there were good people on both sides. No, there weren't. No, there weren't. Sure, the people for Unite the Right have a right to protest and be heard. They don't have a right to harm anybody. But no, they were all sacks of shit. They were all racist pieces of shit. And end of story. That's what they were. And then you had police brutality that's been taking place over the years, and I talked about that pretty recently. And you're having riots right now, and you're having the right wing, wanting to see a military crackdown or a law enforcement crackdown on protesters, and the country is becoming more and more of a powder keg. And then you had the COVID crisis, which is adding more fuel to the fire with lockdowns, and then you have a situation where the Trump administration listens to pieces of shit like Stephen Mnuchin, and many of the corporatist establishment, where they just allow the treasury to be looted while giving next to nothing for poor or middle class people from all backgrounds. And so, you know, I hate to say it, we're in a civil war. It's not like the Civil War in the 1860s, where there are people in uniforms, you know, blasting at each other. And but I don't know where we're headed right now. I have no idea. And unfortunately, it's we don't know how this election is going to turn out. Although I can tell you that the American people lost the 2020 election already. Whether Trump wins or Biden wins by accident, we're going to see no significant change for the better. And what a sad state of affairs this turned out to be. But anyhow, I'm concerned to see what's happened. But we could be in serious decline and collapsing, and we could split apart as a country as a result. Um, whose side am I on? Between red and blue. As an independent, I guess I lean blue technically, but it's just sad what's happened here. It's sad that everybody decides to not be an adult, and everybody wants to be partisan, and everybody wants to be a piece of shit to each other. And I'm saddened by the whole state of affairs of things. And I ranted long enough. So, and I'm going to say hello to the person that's actually live chatting me right now, Cowboy riding the Milky Way galaxy. Hello. And I am about ready to log off, and I will come up with another video soon. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, 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 and give me a thumbs up and help make this channel relevant to the American political discourse. As a man that supports social democracy, civil liberties, oppose war, oppose racism, and support absolute freedom of speech, I'm out of here. Until next time.